This episode of the Capsule in Conversation is brought to you by Harrogate Springwater. Drinking life in since 1571, Harrogate is Britain's premium natural source water, enjoyed the world over. Hello, you are tuning in to the Capsule in Conversation podcast, dedicated to women and their well-being. I'm Natalie Anderson, and today I'm joined by Dr Shahzadi Harper to talk managing perimenopause. So sit back, relax, and get ready to join us in our conversation. Hello all, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you've all had a great week. My lovely guest today is a dynamic doctor interested in optimising women's health and well-being. She's the founder of the Harper Clinic, a registered menopause clinic in the heart of London that has a 360 approach to women's health and well-being. She's also the co-author of the brilliant book, The Perimenopause Solution, alongside the fantastic Emma Bardwell. She's also a member of the British Menopause Society and is passionate about helping women take control of their hormonal health. She's consulted for Channel 4, Coots and Mylan Pharmaceuticals, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome her today. It's the lovely Dr Shahzadi Harper. Hi Shahzadi.
Hi Natalie.
Thank you so much for being with me today. I understand you're a very, very busy lady.
I am, but I'm always pleased to sort of talk about these kind of topics, especially to a younger audience. I know how I have felt sort of out of control with my own hormones when I was younger, particularly suffering with PMS. So, it's really good to be educating and sort of spreading the word.
Absolutely. And as you've just said then, the conversation around menopause and perimenopause, it has changed a lot, especially in the last 2 years. I remember we had Liz Earle on a couple of years ago, and she said she wanted to put the word menopause in her book. And the publisher said, oh no, you can't do that. And she said now the conversation is so different. Do you feel like there's still a lot of women that aren't getting the help that they need?
I think there are a lot of women who maybe aren't aware of what's going on in their bodies. And I think that's why I like to really sort of talk and focus around perimenopause, because I think, you're right. I think the word menopause is out there, but understanding, what is perimenopause, when does it start, or what does it actually mean? I think that's really important to get out there. And also, I think that women are still maybe a little bit stuck on just thinking that menopause is about hot flushes, mood changes, but there are so many symptoms associated with it, and it can start earlier than you think.
Well, absolutely. I mean, on this podcast, we've discussed this quite a lot. And, we're talking as early as kind of mid-30s. And I know for myself, I was probably 38, 39 when I started experiencing, for me, it was more of a loss of control, a real heightened sense of anxiety. And that, for me, I was like, I don't know what's going on here. And putting the two and two together, because it was a doctor that actually explained it to me, and she said, well, actually, you are this age, you could be going through perimenopause. And I didn't even know what that was. And that's only a couple of years ago. So, when you're thinking about someone who might be kind of in their mid 30s, coming up to 40s, what would you say are some of the initial symptoms that women might need to look out for?
And I think that is a really good point that you made there about symptoms can start in your mid-30s, because, I think we are sort of stuck on that sort of narrative or understanding that menopause, i.e. when your periods finally eventually end, is around the age of 50. But we forget that actually about sort of 8 to 10% of women can go through what we call a natural early menopause between the ages of 40 and 45. So if perimenopause, which is that stage leading up to menopause, when symptoms can change because your hormones are starting to change, can occur up to 10 years before your periods eventually stop, then actually, you may start noticing some changes in your early 30s. And some of those initial changes are down to the declining hormones, particularly the first hormone that starts to decline is progesterone. So as you mentioned, things like anxiety, insomnia, that anxiousness feeling, which maybe you've not experienced before, that feeling of feeling overwhelmed or not being able to juggle as many balls as you used to before. Maybe you're feeling that if you are somebody who experiences premenstrual, stress, tension, that maybe that is starting to last a little bit longer. You're feeling more clumsy, you're feeling indecisive, you're feeling a bit flat in mood, that loss of joy feeling. So it doesn't necessarily have to be physical symptoms that you're experiencing. It can be much more of those psychological symptoms, which maybe you're not putting down to hormones. You're just thinking about it as maybe it's life, it's the busyness of life and things. But I think also we sort of throw that word hormone around, but we don't really understand or don't really think that how important these hormones are. Super powerful chemical messages in our body. They help to regulate things like sleep, mood, appetite, as well as our menstrual cycles. So, we've got estrogen and hormone receptors all throughout our body, particularly estrogen, our hero hormone, in our gut, in our brain, in our skin. So that's why we notice these changes, that are starting to occur. And, often as women, we put ourselves at the bottom of the priority list, or maybe we're managing career, new relationships, or children, all of those kind of things, elderly parents. So we often don't think about it, that there may be some biochemical process going on in our body, maybe things are changing. And also we always think, like you said, a few years ago, you didn't know that word perimenopause. I would say, even I as a doctor, 10, 15 years ago, wouldn't have really have known that word perimenopause either. And I think that, we always just think that maybe menopause is a much older woman, and don't really think that it could be you and I. The images that have been thrown at us don't look like you and I.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I find really interesting now. And it's so refreshing is, you've got Naomi Watts, you've got Halle Berry. Obviously, over here, we've got Davina. Women are speaking out about this. Women that we look up to, that we've seen many years, sometimes that we associate obviously with being very glamorous, and the fact that these women are actually owning their menopause and talking about it makes it so much easier for us, because I think, as you said then, the problem a lot has been that we've associated it with an older generation, that's something that's for old ladies. When actually, I'm having this conversation with my sister now. My sister's 36 and she's had 2 children. And she said, I'm a bit off. And I said, well, you could actually just be the very, very early stages. It's not unthinkable. And she's really opening up to that kind of conversation, because I feel like the more we normalize it and the more we kind of showcase that women in their 40s and 50s are powerful women, and you don't just stop being yourselves, then it's easier for a younger generation to talk about. Because if suddenly you say the word menopause and they go, that's not me, that's old. But the destigmatizing is such an important thing, isn't it? And that's kind of, I think, what has been such a big part of the movement.
I think that is happening, actually. I think that's one of the good things that's happening. And I think that's one of the good things to come out of COVID. And, as you mentioned at the beginning, I do talks and wellness talks to a lot of corporate companies and businesses, raising awareness, for their wellness and their and well-being side of their businesses. And I think that normalization, that destigmatization is really important, because I think stress has a huge part to play on our symptoms. And I often hear some people say, well, menopause is something that's been happening for centuries. It's not something that is new. So why are we making a bit more of a song and dance about it? Or why is it that women are complaining about it more? Or why is it suddenly, women saying it's affecting them more? And I would say that it's because as women, we are expected to do so much more nowadays. And I think that we're living under chronic stress. And I think that, 50 years ago, 2 women with the same symptoms, the impact of those symptoms can be very different now compared to then, because the expectations are quite different, and I think one of the powerful things I would say to come out in the last few years for me is how stress is such an important thing to manage as part of the perimenopause and menopause process, and understanding that it affects your hormones. It can almost like, an easy way to describe it's almost like burning up your hormones faster, and so we are then affected much more so by our symptoms. And also I think going out to work, juggling all of the things that I've just been speaking about. I think all of those things, the expectations are far greater in some ways. And also to look glamorous and, those kind of things. I think that we do need to also work on accepting ourselves and the changes that are happening, to our bodies. And, whilst it's great that we have role models or people out there like Davina, like Halle Berry, like Naomi Watts, these are people who do tend to have glam squads, chefs, trainers. I often say if my full-time job was, to just look good and, sort of perform, I probably wouldn't carry that little bit extra around my tummy. But, my day-to-day job is, seeing patients and working as a doctor. So I think it's hard, and I think that it's great that there are also younger women out there coming out and talking about their symptoms, like Martine McCutcheon, like Cherry Healy. I think, are talking about perimenopause, and, these are women sort of in their sort of early 40s and things. Whereas, the Davinas, the Halle Berrys are more in their sort of in that post-menopause stage rather than in the perimenopause stage.
In the thick of it. And I think one of the other things that is the conversation between me and my friends is that a lot of my friends have waited until later to have children. So they're juggling young children in their kind of early 40s. So, but at the same time, there potentially are these symptoms as well. And it's kind of how do you know what's potentially baby blues, so to speak, or perimenopause symptoms? That is a very difficult one to juggle. I've got a friend now who's got literally, she's 44 and her little one is 1, and she's like, I can't get out of this feeling. And I said, you might need to speak to your doctor, because it could quite easily be that it's the perimenopause.
And I'm glad that you're really bringing that up, because I often talk about that. You can go from postnatal to peri.
Yeah.
So, especially, as many women are having children, sort of later, in their late 30s, early 40s. And so you may well be going from, postnatal to peri. And so those baby blues that you're kind of powering your way through, thinking, oh my goodness, I'm having to get up in the night, I'm doing this, that's why I'm so knackered and tired, that's why I'm a bit irritable, and that's why could actually be more because, you're in perimenopause. And it's a natural stage. And so I also think that, perimenopause can coincide with so many other things that can be going on. We know that about one of the changes that happens in perimenopause and postnatally is that you may be experiencing heavy periods. So, you may be having heavy periods, flooding, clotting, and about 12 to 15% of women are iron deficient, iron deficient anemia. And it may well be because you might be vegetarian or vegan. Also, many of us are sort of thinking about our weight. So maybe our food intake, whilst it might be good food, we may not be taking in as much food. And, I think that things like iron deficiency anemia can give very similar symptoms to perimenopause. You can get palpitations, anxiety, shortness of breath, fatigue, brain fog, headaches. Again, vitamin D deficiency can give you sort of aches and pains, flatness of mood, lethargy, lacking, that sort of oomph and energy. Again, things like thyroid changes. More likely women have an underactive thyroid. So again, things like weight gain, that brain fog, that fatigue, feeling cold. So I think perimenopause, whilst, measuring hormones are not a a specific indicator. I think, having a sort of a sort of more holistic, all round check, of your physical health, as well as your, sort of having a check-in with your doctor around sort of your mental health, I think is a really good time to take charge. And going back to that sort of feeling out of control that you might have been, one step in getting back in control. And, funny enough, only a few weeks ago, I did the same thing for myself. I had a blood test because I think that, women need to have a blood test, I would say, just annually, just to sort of keep on top of things and be proactive. And for me, and I'm smiling because here I am as a doctor confessing in a way. I was thinking, oh, am I a bit, seasonal affective? Is it maybe I'm not, maybe I need to change my hormone dose. maybe it's this. It was actually that I was iron deficient. I was low on my iron because I had a couple of heavy periods, and it kind of threw me thinking it's not like I don't eat meat or vegetables, I don't have a restrictive diet, but I'd had a couple of heavy periods, and it had sort of, flattened me out a bit.
And that is so interesting to hear you say that, because I agree with you. Like I wish it was kind of more of a normalized thing that we would go and get an overall like MOT, and
Yes.
actually this is what we need to do. But I think because the conversation around women's health hasn't been of any importance really until more recent times, I think it's only now that we are able to kind of start wanting to take charge. Like you said earlier, we've always been the bottom of the pile. It's always been, oh, I'll do that later. But actually those blood tests and like getting in with a doctor, it's so important, isn't it? If you were thinking like, oh, I'm wondering if I am experiencing perimenopause, and you want to go and see the doctor, what would you say kind of you need to go armed with?
So I think first of all, sort of to make the most of your appointment, and I think you should make an appointment. If you aren't feeling like yourself, if you're feeling off, and funny enough, I say the same thing. I say to women, if you're around the age of 40, if you're not feeling like yourself, this is a time to have a bit of a check in with yourself first before you go to the doctor. And I think, sort of looking at your symptoms. And you mentioned my book, The Perimenopause Solution. There is a symptom checker that I've written in there, page 287 of the book. But you can download one, a menopause symptom checker, perimenopause symptom checker, whatever you want to call it. But quite a comprehensive one, because sometimes one of the things that many women say when I send them out a symptom checker is that, oh, I hadn't really thought about that. Oh, is that why I'm rushing to the toilet a little bit more? Maybe vaginal dryness, yeah, I have lost my libido and drive. I am gaining weight around the middle. Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that sense of overwhelm could be associated with my hormones. So I think, writing your symptoms down. But I think the reason why I would say a symptom checker is good is because some of the things you may not have even noticed or thought about in association with your hormones. You may have not noticed that you're getting more frequent headaches. You may not have noticed that, you are really tired a lot of the time, because you might have just thought it was just, day to day. So I think, get yourself a symptom checker, download it, or can I do a plug for the book?
Of course you can.
Because on Kindle at the moment, if you get the Kindle version, it's only 99p. So, if you could get the Kindle version, you could look at the symptom checker. And I think it's a good way to go prepared to the doctors. You've got the information in front of you, because, in that situation, you might forget half of your symptoms. You might, become overwhelmed. You might get anxious. You might be put on the spot. So I think being prepared, going in there, looking at what's going on in your body, so you can give that information to your doctor. And yes, it may be appropriate to do some blood tests on you. And if you are a younger woman and your periods have changed, then actually doing some hormone tests might be appropriate. Or if you are a woman with a Mirena coil or a progesterone only pill, whereby you may not have periods, so you don't have an indicator of whether or not your periods have changed, again, hormone tests might be appropriate in that instance. Also, if you're a woman whose mother went through an earlier menopause, and then it's also important to recognize that you may be someone who might experience the same thing. There may be a genetic, a hereditary component, and so you may be somebody who might go through an earlier menopause. So, I get asked the question a lot, well, does your mother's menopause, sort of journey, does that mean that yours is going to be the same? And I think on the whole, I wouldn't say so, because, going back to what I said at the beginning, I think we live in slightly different times. However, the caveat to it would be, if your mother went through an early menopause or an earlier menopause, then yes, I would say that is something to bear in mind, with yourself. And especially, for younger women, that conversation should maybe be, you should be having with your mothers in, as early as possible, especially if you're planning your if you're planning a family, or thinking about when you want to, sort of consider getting pregnant and things like that, because then you may not want to leave it as long.
And again, having that kind of ownership over your health and the stages of women's health, and not shying away from it and going, because I think that's the problem, is it's been so shrouded in secrecy. And, it's intergenerational conversations, and depending on ethnic backgrounds or whichever, there's been this kind of cover over the menopause. Like, it's all well and good passing on pregnancy stories. Well, this happened to me and that happened to me. But when it comes to menopause, it's like the conversation, the door is closed. So opening up and taking charge and having those open conversations is the first step, I think, in helping a younger generation just have more control.
And I think younger women should also take that ownership and ask their mothers, their older sisters, almost. I think that I was surprised when I asked my mother. This was only a few months ago, actually, and and she was like, it was horrendous for me, and I thought, gosh, she didn't speak about it herself, but she when asked, she opened up about it, and when I showed her the book, she was very keen that women should know about it. I'm of Pakistani heritage, and my mother said to me, is this book coming out in Pakistan? And I thought she was looking at me in that funny kind of way, thinking she's going to tell me off because I've got an outline of a naked woman on the front of the book. And being Muslim, she's going to be like, oh my goodness, what are you doing? You are bringing our family name into shame, or something like that. And I said, well, I'm not sure, Mum. And she said, because it should do, because women need to know. And I was very touched, and actually, sort of humbled when she said that, because I thought, that generation of women have powered through, and suffered. And why should women continue suffering? And going back to you saying, women's health is, there's such a gender inequality when it comes to research, when it comes to awareness. I think that as women, we're just expected to get on with things. Oh, it's your hormones. But again, forget how powerful these.
That's a big word, isn't it? I mean, it's such a big thing. Like, you're like, just don't trivialize it like that. It's infuriating. Like, my hormones, yeah, yes, okay, but that's how so many of us are governed, and that can be, if it's out of whack in terms of food or sleep or anything, it can be massively affected. And as you said earlier, we are a different generation. We're dealing with tech. We didn't have that. Like, that wasn't around 50 years ago. And that kind of impact on us, being on call 24/7 and having children that also have tech, and you're having to combat that as well, and helicopter parenting and be everything to everyone, and it's so true, because what you were saying about stress, I was doing a project just before Christmas, and my symptoms were really exacerbated because it was a very stressful job, and it was performing every night, and I would come off stage and be like, have a really racing heart and want to cry. Now, over Christmas, when I've not been doing that, my symptoms have hardly anything. And it's such a big indicator, like what you said before, about the impact of how stress can change everything. So, for anyone that is listening to this, what you were saying before, Shahzadi, about kind of the overall check-in, looking for anchors in your well-being, looking at how you can kind of change things in your lifestyle, because that's another thing, isn't it? Nutrition, sleep.
Yeah, I mean, we go through, quite a significant sort of metabolic changes in perimenopause. Our body composition changes. We're becoming at a higher risk of things like diabetes, obesity, hypertension, because our estrogen levels decline. And really, and I was talking about this to somebody, saying, as a doctor, we get taught, stress affects your risk of heart disease, hypertension, all of that. But I mean, I'll be honest, as a junior doctor, probably just thought, well, does it really affect it that much? Does it really? And actually, yes, it does. And one of the things I did, sort of a few months ago, was that I wore, and as part of the clinic, we do this as well. We manage things in a 360. So we're looking at sort of blood sugar balance, and I wore a continuous glucose monitor. And, the first week I was sort of away, I was on, sort of at a retreat, and my blood sugars were lovely and calm, sort of in a nice little sort of steady state, and everything like that, all good, within range. The next week I was back at work, in the hustle and bustle of work and things. Food wasn't prepared for me in the same kind of way. I think what really shocked me was not the whole food thing, but I remember after I had a few sort of conversations, sort of around my clinic. It was, sort of business conversation, and my blood sugar spiked. And I was like, oh my God,
Wow.
it's nothing to do with me having a cream cake or anything like. It's about stress. I was a bit annoyed and, sort of, and frustrated and angry, kind of thing. And my blood sugar spiked. And I was like, wow, when you see something like that right in front of you,
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness. And I could see that my baseline had shifted in that week to a higher baseline because of living under this sort of chronic everyday stress. So I see this within so many of my patients as well who are on treatment, on HRT or medical hormone treatment, that, when they're on holiday, maybe they don't need quite the same dose. When they've maybe moved out of the city, it's slightly different, the needs change. So again, it goes back to impact. And I think, especially those of us maybe who are living in cities, juggling so many different things, I think we are living under a lot more of this sort of chronic stress, which then increases inflammation in our body, as well. So that's why we need to learn to manage. I think stress management is a really important aspect of managing perimenopause and menopause. And that's why I think businesses and corporations understanding menopause will actually reduce the stress for their employees and their staff, and hopefully then help with the management of their symptoms. And this will help with retention of staff, keeping their employees happy and motivated. So I think it's a huge part of hormonal management.
And as you said there, I think the wellness has almost in some kind of respect been taken so crazily now that it's like wellness, 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 wellness. So we shouldn't lose sight of actually how important managing our well-being actually is, when you bring it back to basics, because there are so many things out there now. But in fact, menopause and wellness together, the two massive words that can be very toxic in terms of marketing. But actually, when you strip it back and just really go back to basics with sleep, nutrition, kind of alcohol reduction,
movement,
yeah.
And I think just enjoying things like going out for a walk in nature, one of the things that I try and do every morning, even if it means I just stick my head out of the window, is just, sort of take a few deep breaths, go into the garden, take a few deep breaths, not necessarily in this cold weather going full out there, but even that, that's quite nice. I think that those kind of things are it's going back to basics, really. I don't think it's all about lotions and potions and supplements and things. There are some things that, I think are useful. I always advocate vitamin D for everybody. I think magnesium is great, for nearly everybody. I think HRT can be great for many women. So I think I'm not saying no to any of these things, but I think it's, if you think just applying your lotion and potion and taking supplements is going to make you fit and healthy and live long, that's not the answer. It's not a replacement it's not lifestyle replacement therapy.
No, and you mentioned there, HRT, and that's something I wanted to ask you about. HRT, and again, younger women, because predominantly, so many young women, even still now, think that HRT is given to you kind of at menopause, so at that 12 months where you've not had a period, and actually it's there really to manage symptoms, isn't it? So do you think, and I don't know how it works for you in your clinic, it's younger women should be kind of given HRT maybe earlier if they need it?
I mean, the short answer, is yes. And I think maybe the word HRT is not, I think we're moving towards medical hormone treatment, because when women think about HRT, it's a hormone replacement therapy. So they are thinking, oh, when my hormones have run out, that's when I should get it. Whereas I think if you think about it as maybe medical hormone treatment, and one of the ways that I talk about it for those younger women perimenopause is it's a top-up. It's a top-up, it's almost like top-up treatment. We're not replacing, it's also not a replacement for contraception in those younger women, because if you still have periods, you still have a cycle. If you've not gone through menopause, then technically, you could still get pregnant. So, if you're thinking you need contraception, then hormone treatment is not going to give you that. But what I would say is I often refer to it more as a top-up treatment, and you don't need to go on every single hormone right at the beginning. We can do things in a staggered way, or have a more tailored approach to what your symptoms are. And also, again, it's about optimizing those other pillars of your life as well. And sometimes what happens is if you're then sleeping better, you've got more energy to go and, be more active. If you are sleeping better, maybe your brain is functioning better, so you're not going to leave your job and things like that. So, if you feel calmer in yourself. So I think it is very much a sort of tailored individual approach. But I think that, yeah, I very much do think that sometimes adding in medical hormone treatment sooner rather than later can be beneficial, especially maybe if you've got a family history of dementia like I do. I started on my HRT, medical hormone treatment, when I was 43. My mother has dementia, and we know that that there can be some positives, if you start in your perimenopause rather than leaving it later. So I often think that it can be a catalyst to help you make those self-improvement changes that you've been wanting to do.
Yeah.
And sort of just don't have the energy for it or the motivation for it. And so it can actually improve your health in the long run, for you.
I was going to say that for some people that I've spoken to have said, it can act as a preventative medicine as well with regards to the heart. I mean, what's your expertise on that, obviously?
So I think it's not licensed for that. It's a
Right.
short answer. Okay. And I think that, again, going back to the fact that I wouldn't want it to be abused in that manner, and people avoid, like I said, sort of lifestyle measures and things like that. And also, I don't want women who can't go on to medical hormone treatment to think that, oh my goodness, because I'm not on it, that means that I'm going to get heart disease, or I'm going to get dementia, or I'm going to get osteoporosis. Because definitely, you can manage that without, you can reduce your risks without having to be on it. But we do know that estrogen plays a protective, a cardioprotective effect, and we know that women's heart disease risk increases around the age of menopause. So yes, it can have beneficial effect. It can reduce risks, when it comes to heart disease. We know that it can also for osteoporosis prevention, also from a point of sort of all cause cancers. And I think the reason behind that is often those women on medical hormone treatment tend to be more active, sort of and more proactive, managing their lifestyle, diet, nutrition, all of those aspects.
Hydrating style with Harrogate Spring Water. A delicate blend of naturally occurring minerals and electrolytes, Harrogate is your perfect hydration partner. From the Royal Albert Hall, Ascot Racecourse to the world's most reputable airlines, Harrogate is the UK's #1 water brand, and as a certified B Corp business, they're committed to being a force for good. Harrogate Spring Water, drinking life in since 1571. One of the other things, you briefly touched on it a minute ago, is people as well, I think, some women think that you can't get pregnant during perimenopause, and that's not the case, is it?
No. So perimenopause is a stage before menopause, and what's going on there is that your body is still producing hormones, but your ovaries are winding down. So the ovaries, which release an egg every month, may not do so every month. It may be every 2 months or 3 months or 1 month or something like that. But what's happening is, and which is natural, is that ovulation is winding down and becoming less frequent, but it hasn't stopped until you've gone through menopause. So if you are over the age of 50 and you've had a year without a period, then you can safely stop your contraception, because that means that your ovaries have wound down and you've gone through menopause. If you are under the age of 50, you need to wait 2 years for yourself to not have a period before you can safely stop contraception. Okay. So yes. So if you're in perimenopause, and even though your periods may be erratic and spaced out, you technically still have to also be mindful that you might need that you will need contraception until you have officially gone through menopause.
And if you were trying for a baby, then you would obviously need to look at your cycle and possibly speak to a doctor to kind of talk about chances and all of that kind of thing. But it can happen.
It can happen. 1 in 100 women do still get pregnant by the age of 50. Again, bearing in mind as we get older, our risk increases, so the risk to a pregnant woman increases and the risk to a fetus increases as well. So it is something that you should go and talk to your doctor about, plan it out. I don't mean plan it out as in time wise, but just look at where you can make the changes in your sort of diet, lifestyle, and also being realistic.
I mean, you mentioned lifestyle there. I know you developed this fantastic program, Let's Get Wasted, which I love the title of. Just talk to me a little bit more about that.
I think very much in my experience, I found that women, even when they go on to medical hormone treatment, one of the things that really bothers women, and as it should do from a health perspective, is that weight gain, but particularly waist gain. So when I say let's get wasted, it's wasted as in the waist.
Yeah.
And it really is to tackle those metabolic changes that occur, to women, that sort of body composition changes. Some women may still be fitting into the same clothes, but they feel that they've lost their muscle mass, the muscle tone, and also maybe their waistline. And that waistline fat, that visceral fat increases your risks of things like heart disease, and also puts you at high risk of developing things like, sort of pre-diabetes, diabetes, and hypertension. So it's really helping women to sort of, it's a bit of a changing your mind's process, also helping you to lose that waistline on, and also regain that sort of muscle back, because I think we really underestimate the power of protein. And particularly, I suppose, my generation growing up, everybody was taught about calories, but it's not about just calories in and calories out. It's also understanding that actually, around perimenopause, because our estrogen levels decline, inflammation increases, insulin sensitivity reduces. And so, we are almost like fighting an uphill battle. So it's not as simple as just eating less and moving more, but it's also what should you be eating? How should you be moving? Again, going back to, for most of us, it can't be a full-time job managing it. So the program is really to help women to put an order back into their life, change their thinking patterns. So we sort of provide them with, sort of worksheets. They check in with a nutritionist on a weekly basis, and it's to give them that support and guidance and meal planning. Because the other thing that used to frustrate me when I was younger was, my mother was obese, and we'd go in to the doctors and said, "Oh, Mrs. Rana, you need to lose weight," and blah blah blah. But the meal plans the foods were nothing to do with the foods that we had at home. We ate curries, we ate chapatis, we ate rice. My mum couldn't follow that. So, I think it's very much understanding, again, going back to that individuality, that, it's about tailoring the plans to you. And it's about sort of reclaiming your waistline.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I mean, obviously, like we were just, the play on the word, but going back to what you were saying then about it being very individual, because as you say, when you look at these meal plans, they just feel very kind of set and very westernized as well, as in like a Western diet. There's no kind of movement within that. And I expect for anyone that is trying, from a different culture, ethnic background, trying to follow something, would be like, well, this is so insane to me. It'd be like, when people talk to me about the keto diet, I'm like, I've always been a bread girl, and I know obviously as I'm getting older, I'm having to kind of reduce that now, mainly because I know how it affects me. But at the same time, if it's not being part of your everyday living or something that a staple that you would go to, it is difficult to follow, isn't it?
100%. And I think also, the other thing I would say is it's about being healthy. I think that we do need to almost change our mindset a little bit, accept that our body has changed, is given to us. You may not get into the same genes as when you were 25 or something like that. That doesn't make you, a worse person or anything like that. But you can still be healthy, fit, look good. But there has to be also an element, I think, of acceptance of change that's occurring. And I think that that is really hard, I think, in perimenopause as well. I think perimenopause is really difficult because, you look in the mirror, you may not see that same person staring back at you. You can see the changes that are going on. And that's why I think, women collectively, we can make that change because, I think in the past I've questioned it myself, who am I doing this for? Is it me? Is it for, society? Is it for a man? Or what's it all about? And I think that owning who you are, it's going back again to sort of taking control of who you are, taking charge of that person is super sort of important. And I think, managing weight in a healthy way and changing your mindset in a positive way is important. And, I love bread. I don't think I could live, breadless. Maybe
I
going
am
for,
with you on that.
maybe going for more seeded bread, maybe not having as much bread, looking at other sort of options, and but also thinking, well, how can I boost the protein with my bread? Those kind of things. What can I also add with it? Maybe instead of having 2 slices, I'll have 1 and have some scrambled eggs or something like that. So I think it's changing the way that we're thinking, and I think it's undoing some of the harm that maybe has been done in our 20s and 30s. So that's what Let's Get Wasted is about. And, I really kind of did it a lot for myself as well. I've always had a slightly unhealthy relationship with food and my weight, when I was younger. And I think some of it is, well, look, maybe I can't get into that small, but maybe the medium isn't too bad. And maybe occasionally getting the large size, and might be the right size for me. But, I'm fit and healthy, those kind of things. I think those are the things to look at.
And it's how you see yourself in the mirror. Like you said, that is the biggest challenge, isn't it? Because what you were saying there, the decade between 40 and 50 and those kind of quite rapid changes that happen in front of your eyes, you're going from being relatively girlish still to kind of definitely more midlife. And those changes, and, you can try and fight it, or, as you were saying then, accept who you are and kind of have that wisdom, that inner wisdom that you have, and look back at what you've actually done and write it down and feel proud of who you are. But we're just not used to doing that, are we? We're not used to praising ourselves.
I think that again goes back to re-educating ourselves, but also I think that's the beauty of what we're doing now. We're educating the young people, children, to I love the fact that my 14-year-old nephew says to me, when I grow up, I want to be like you. And I thought to myself, that's a young boy saying that. And, that for me, is really nice that they don't see sort of gender. They don't see, those obstacles that maybe that I've had to face getting to this point. He just sees me as, his auntie and things like that. So I think that's kind of where we want to be. And, they talk about menopause happily. My sister came in with a hot flush and he went, oh, is that menopause? Do you want a glass of water? He went and gave it and just got on
So
with
good.
And I think that is I think that's where we want to. And I think older generations and older men, my boyfriend, I think finds it quite challenging, to think that, he, about menopause and things like that. But then they're that generation that has grown up slightly differently. Why, there's a little bit of harder work to do there. It's easier on the 12, 14-year-olds.
Yeah, as you say, my son talks about it all the time because my son hears me talking about it, and he's 11. So he's just like, she's doing a menopause chat, because he's so used to it. And I've obviously explained it to him. And he's like, oh, yeah, fine. And that's it, done and dusted. And like you said, that's quite freeing. And it's nice to know that as younger, men are growing up, that they'll understand this kind of this world of women, really, and the things that we'll go through.
Quite funny is, I never went onto social media for the youth, or I never went on there. I just went on there to sort of educate and also to keep my clinic alive, kind of thing. And I think that because things have grown from that, what's lovely is that they then just think, oh my goodness, our auntie's on social media, and it's like showing me off to their friends. I was a little bit sort of perturbed when one of my Instagram power hours was on vaginal health and things. I thought, I'm not quite sure that he should be that one should be shared at that age, at 12 or something. But I'm just saying it's lovely that, because we're entering into their world, and yourself as well, sort of in that public space, they're almost proud of us, in that kind of way. So it's lovely.
Absolutely. And as you say, just giving them the right information, because for so long there's been the wrong information. So actually getting the right information is a massive plus point. I mean, as we were talking there about, confidence in women, one of the most common things I think I've heard, and I'm sure you have as well, is hair, and how the thinning of people's hair, loss of hair, has such a huge impact on a woman's confidence. I mean, can you just talk me through a few things, as like what's actually happening there when women start to lose hair, and what people can do about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is such a frightening thing, and I think it goes back to confidence. And I think the whole thing about perimenopause is that women do lose their confidence, or they feel that because of that sort of rapid change in themselves, that maybe that their own self-esteem and confidence goes. And I think again that's why I think blood tests are really good, to check whether or not there's things like iron deficiency or thyroid issues. But also we know that in perimenopause, as your estrogen levels decline, you may find that there is hair thinning, shedding, that loss of fullness. You may feel that your hair's become more dry, more brittle. Breakage is much more common. So I think first of all, addressing diet, nutrition. It's from the inside out. It's not just about putting lotion, sort of oils and massaging and things like that. But I think that and addressing any imbalances and deficiencies that occur. But and hair loss is multifactorial. After having a baby, you may notice that you've got hair thinning. After an operation, you may notice that. After a divorce, a relationship breakdown. I went through a horrible breakup in 2017. And I lost a lot of hair around that time. And yet people sort of message me on Instagram saying, "I love your hair, Dr. Harper," blah blah blah. But I'm like, yeah, no, thank you. And I think for me, it's, I do eat a lot of sort of nuts and things like that. I also I am on HRT as well. I'm also on my iron medication. I do prefer women to be at the upper end of the sort of iron range rather than the lower end. And again, doing things like that helps sort of manage your stress again to reduce that. I think the scary thing about hair is you can say all of these things, and it's difficult for women because the hair cycle is 6 to 9 months, so you won't see a difference overnight. But often one of the differences many women will notice when they go on to hormone treatment is that less of their hair is falling, less of their hair is breaking. So actually, that might be one of the reasons that they may be they come and see me, is that they know they're in perimenopause and maybe have experiencing other symptoms, but when hair starts to fall, they're there sitting in front of me. And you will notice that going on to hormone treatment will help to reduce the hair thinning, the hair sort of shedding. So those are things that you can do. Also, massaging, sort of a good scalp oil. I don't know if you got a chance to see, Natalie, I've created a body care range for women. One of them is a hair oil. And really the reason for creating the range was for what women had said, looking at sort of exfoliating products for the body oils, because skin gets really dry. It's got a vaginal or vulvovaginal oil for, that sort of vaginal and vulval dryness that experiencing. And one of the things is a hair oil. I've got some in at the moment.
It looks beautiful. I was just thinking her hair looks amazing.
Whilst you can put it on and really massage and stimulate the blood flow to the scalp, also, remember that, we do use a lot of styling tools these days, and afterwards, I just rub a little bit of oil on the ends just to give it a bit more shine and things like that. So I think that you do have to take more care of it. I personally and I wasn't given it or anything. I invested in a Dyson hairdryer, and I think that makes a huge difference as well. So I think we do have to pay more attention to our skin, our hair, our bodies. The things that worked when we were in our 20s and 30s, we need to change this up. And this isn't just me saying it as a marketing thing, because one of the comments you made is menopause has become such a marketing thing out there. There's all this meno washing going on out. So I think there are. But I think there are genuinely things that we need to do. Maybe we need to moisturize our bodies more frequently. Maybe we have to take more consideration with what we apply on our hair. Also looking at sort of the creams and things that we apply on our skin. But ultimately it goes back to from the inside out. You must drink plenty of water, you must move, eat more. Nuts are something that really become like one of my sort of godsends,
Yeah.
around. So
and reducing alcohol as well, because that is another big thing that I hear a lot of, is that their women's reactions to alcohol, but also how much alcohol in these years can deplete you of so much. So even just mindful drinking, like if you do want to drink, then have a drink, but also interchange it with sparkling water or another soft drink. That will just help you kind of get into habits that soon become a way of life, that then it doesn't feel like such a huge change.
And I think that interchanging it is one of the ways that I often say to women is, just have a glass of water in between or a soft drink. And also, look, things like particularly wines can be, cause that sort of allergy type reaction for many women, maybe steering towards more sort of those cleaner spirits rather than looking at, rather than drinking wine. And also I think when you open a bottle of wine, it can be very hard then to not finish a bottle of wine as well. Right? So I think that also making sure you stop smoking full stop. Caffeine intake, reducing it. I'm not anti-coffee at all, because I think it helps with mood, it helps with lots of other factors. But I do remember 2 days ago, funny enough, I forgot to have my coffee. Well, I'd run out of I had a decaf, and I literally fell asleep on the sofa in the evening. So it does help, it does help. I do like a coffee kick in the morning though, but I'm just saying that, just be mindful of mindful of drinking alcohol, mindful of coffee drinking, and also sugar, really cut down.
It's hard, that one, though, because that's the thing that I noticed more than anything. I was like, I have never wanted sweets in my life. And all of a sudden, post my 40th birthday, I was like, my son would have Haribo and I'd find myself like sneakily eating them. And I was like, where has this come from? But it's clearly, like, now having the research that I've done and all the guests that I've spoken to, it is a big factor, isn't it? Like, the sugar.
It's because so many things, because we're not sleeping so well, so we end up feeling hungrier, we're tired, we need more energy, and also our cortisol levels, stress hormone levels increases, insulin sensitivity decreases. So again, going back to that metabolic changes that occur. So so I think regulating our sugar intake. I mean, like, one of the things I've done recently is I don't have any jam, mum. I don't have a sweet breakfast anymore.
Yes.
And that's been sort of, and I would say do things in one step at a time. I'm not telling everybody to give it up all of it, because I can't do it, So for me, it's very much one step at a time and baby steps, but you'll get there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been such an incredible chat. Honestly, it's been so informative. I really thank you so much for your time. And as you've just said then, it doesn't need to be all at once. Just those tiny little steps will definitely go a long way, won't they?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And it's not about a new you. I think it's just about you wanting to be a better version of you. And I think, again, it's just about taking those small steps. You don't have to, it's not an overnight change, because we haven't got here overnight.
Oh, that's such a fantastic way to end our conversation. Thank you so much for being with me. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. I hope you guys at home have enjoyed being with us too. It's been such an informative episode. For more from Shahzadi, you can follow her on Instagram at Dr Shahzadi Harper, or visit her website www.theharperclinic.com. You can also get her brilliant book, which is here, The Perimenopause Solution, which is available online and in all good bookshops. For more wellbeing and lifestyle, you can always visit us at our website www.thecapsule.co.uk, where you can also catch up with our previous podcast episodes by streaming from any of our podcast channels and YouTube. As always, please do leave your rates and reviews. It's been lovely to hear all of your comments so far. Thank you so much for joining us, and keep them coming. You can also drop us a message at our Instagram at Official Capsule if you'd like to put a message to any future guest, or just leave us a message about anything really. So get in touch. As always, I will be back next week with another very special guest. So all that's left for us to say today is goodbye. So it's goodbye from Dr Harper.
Goodbye.
And goodbye from me. Bye-bye. This episode of The Capsule in Conversation was brought to you by Harrogate Spring Water. Bottled at source, Harrogate Spring offers a refreshing taste of Yorkshire with a delicate blend of naturally occurring minerals and electrolytes, perfect for healthy hydration.